Hi, Tom. We're really excited to have you here as a guest on our podcast, The Cast. So, welcome and thank you for being here.
It's a joy to be here and I'm excited to take part.
So, with that being said, we'll just jump right into the first question then. So, Tom, can you describe the impact that your post secondary education had on your career up to this point?
Sure. I don't think I would have been able to do what I've done without my post secondary education. I grew so much, both at my undergrad and graduate level, as a student, but more importantly, as a person. You just don't know what you're capable of until you're tested. And university has a way of doing that over and over and over again. And as I went through my undergrad, I like to tell the story of my struggle with stats. And my first undergraduate degree was in geography. And stats was always my nemesis. And I put it off and I put it off. And you're supposed to take it in second year, I didn't take it. You're supposed to take it in third year, I didn't take it. First semester, fourth year, didn't take it. And there I was. If I'm going to graduate, I got to take this thing. And I got through it and I did okay. But like everything else, when you try to adhere to the principles of perseverance and continually picking yourself up, you find a way to get through so much in life. To me, my education taught me that. And in my professional career, I found myself having to remind myself constantly that when things are difficult, you wake up, there's a new day, the sun shines out, and you go get it, go after it all over again. So for sure, it was a huge part of what I did.
Yeah, amazing. I agree that if there's one word that I would describe my university experience with, it's probably perseverance. I've been in the same boat too with some stats classes as well. So thank you for sharing your insight on that. I'm going to pass it off to Cece to ask the next few questions.
Hi, Tom. Okay,
Uh,
I'm just going to jump right into the second question. Throughout your career as a teacher, you taught various subjects within the industry. In your opinion, what skills are the most important skills to have in order to teach multiple subjects, and how did you acquire them?
I think as I read the question earlier, I thought to myself, are there skills or is it an approach? And to me, communication is key. I think as teachers, as coaches, as anyone that works with young people, the ability to communicate and build a trust bond with your students, with your athletes is critical because without that trust, it's really difficult to get to know them and to go ahead and spend time. Just this past weekend, I was in the US at a tournament, one of the teams that I work with, and we had a break in our schedule. And what we did was we did about an hour and a half team building activity. And I've known some of these athletes for 5, 6 years, some a little less, but I learned so much because I took the time to listen. And we all shared something about ourselves that we didn't know previously. And it's amazing when you build a bond with a person. And that's so important. It doesn't matter what generation you are. We all as human beings need to know that someone cares about us. And that's something I've tried to do. I knew early on in high school I wanted to teach. And I think back to that time in high school where I had a chance to work in elementary school. And that was the first thing I did naturally. I tried to bond and connect with students. So teaching multiple subjects, it's really, you're teaching the same thing. You're teaching about caring relationships. You're teaching about investing in students. And the other part, and this is more modern practice, is partnership. Teaching today is more about a partnership. We need to get through this, do this together. We're going to adhere to some principles, of course, but we're going to come together to get through so much of what we're trying to do. And that's something I've really tried to do in my teaching.
The teamwork and just having the approach of like we're all in this together and yeah, I'm in this to help you is very important in teaching. While at York University, you were simultaneously a professor for kinesiology and men's basketball coach. What strategies and approaches did you use to successfully manage the two roles?
Organization. My time there, I'd be lying if I told you it was easy. It was stressful. When you coach at the university level, it truly is 7 days a week. And you find yourself needing more support. You find yourself kind of looking out, hey, where else can I get support? And you often find it's not there, definitely not from the people who are in a position to support you. So one of the things I really spent a lot of time with was planning. I do a lot of work in coaching education currently. I do work with Canada basketball and Ontario basketball. And one of the courses we teach in the certification process is season planning. And how do you go about planning your seasons? So one of the things I would try and do is always be at least 6 months ahead, because it's the only way you can do it. You try to get some sleep and you try to eat whenever you can and make sure you have enough energy to keep going. So without that planning and organization, I couldn't do it. And I would often have multiple calendars in my office with goals and things that needed to be accomplished within the next few months, and travel schedules and things of that nature, because that was the only way you could get it done. So yeah, for sure, it was organization and planning were the skills that I relied on. And it's funny, I'm not being there now, but still living a very busy life. I live off my calendar on my phone and constantly thinking, where am I at? And where am I going? And what's next? And before I commit to anything, I said, I got to check. Hold on, let me make sure I'm free, because it's so easy to double book. So those are the skills necessary.
For the previous question that you answered, you mentioned that education, you knew since middle school that you wanted to teach, and it was because you taught at an elementary school for a bit, and you said that was the first thing that came naturally. Could you elaborate more on how you discovered your passion?
Yeah, I went to a great high school, CC. I went to C.W. Jeffries, which is Keele and Finch area, just off of Sentinel. And my time at that school was just an invaluable experience. And at the time, when you went to high school, you lived and were taught in the city of Toronto. Back in the day, the city was split up into jurisdictions. So I was part of the North York Board of Education. And the North York Board of Education had a program. And what it did, it allowed anyone interested in trying out a number of different careers. You would get time off school, almost like a co-op, but it was less formal than co-op was. And you'd go out to a school. So I said, this is interesting. My brother was already teaching. He's older than I am. And he was doing it. So I said, hey, let me try this, because I knew I liked kids and I knew I liked working with people. And I also knew the thought of being at an office in a desk was not my cup of tea. So I went to guidance, I set it up, and they put me at a elementary school down the street in what was at the time supposed to be a difficult neighborhood. And I literally just jumped in as if I was diving off of a diving board into the deep end. And it was one of the great experiences I had. And I got such positive feedback from the teacher that I always kept that in the back of my head. And when I did my undergrad, I said, I think I'm going to pursue this. And I did. And all my summers where other friends were getting more lucrative paying jobs, I was working minimum wage jobs in teaching related fields, whether it be camps, whether it be youth programs, just gaining that experience of working with kids. And that, to me, I look back, the risk I took when everybody else was just going to class paid off, more than I ever thought at the time, because it reaffirmed that this is something I want to do. Kudos to the people who set that up. It was a great idea.
Yeah, I think it might be the precursor of co-op. And co-op has been really helped a lot of high school students discover what they really want to do.
Oh, for sure. Especially when you go in it with the right mindset. Hey, you know what? I really want to see if this is something I want to do. And, Cece, sometimes it's not so much, this is what I want to do. This is what I don't want to do. And that's just as valuable, right? Because sometimes we have to learn the hard way the things we don't want to do, compared to, this is going to be awesome. I can't wait.
For the next question, from your perspective, what advantages does pursuing multiple interests offer in one's professional growth? Additionally, if relevant, how did these complementary interests contribute to your personal development?
They say now that your generation is going to have somewhere in the vicinity of 7 to 10 careers during the 40 plus years of your lifespan working, and I, at the time, didn't think that, right? I went into teaching to be a teacher for the rest of my career. But I had a passion for sports, and in particular basketball. And that basketball love affair happened in grade nine. And there was a gentleman, his name is Bob Harris, a shout out to Mr. Harris. And he was my teacher at my first high school I went to. And I have a late birthday. So I got to play Bantam. At the time, there were three levels: Bantam, Junior, Senior. All my friends played basketball. I didn't play very much at the time, but they were my friends. So I hung out. They had a great elementary school run. So I tried out for the team, and I'm the last guy he picked. And the only reason he picked me, he ended up telling me later, was because I got to play on the same team the year after. So after having a year of not playing, I said, I can't do this. I said, I really like this basketball thing. So I spent the whole summer without any, remember, no YouTube. I just learned how to play, and I played every day. And it developed a love affair of the game. And probably it was my first true love that's never left me. So as I continued to play, I thought this is going to be a great segue to teaching. When I became a teacher, I happened to go to a high school. It's now St. Mother Teresa. It was Blessed Mother Teresa. Back then, it was just Mother Teresa. They were a new school, and I had a number of choices where I could go. Unlike now, where it's challenging to get a teaching position, then you got hired relatively easy. So I handpicked that school, and I started to. I like to consider it a laboratory, and every day I got to try things out as I was teaching in the classroom. And there was an innocence to teaching then, because the things weren't as political, and you really did it because of the joy of the job. And I was able to really grow in it. And at the same time, I started to figure out what works for me as a teacher, what style best reflects me. And as I went on my career, I think I developed more and more empathy for my students and where they were coming from. I think sometimes educators get caught up in the curriculum, and it's really not about the curriculum. It's really about the relationships. It's really about getting to know students. And you and I met online in that class that I was teaching, and I tell people it was probably one of the greatest teaching experiences I've ever encountered. Not because I felt I was great at it, but because of the relationships I had with my students. And we were both longing for something, because this COVID stuff is killing us. We're stuck at home. We're looking at the same 2, 3, 4 people every day, and there's nowhere to go. And all of a sudden I meet 24 people, and they're looking at me like, who's this guy? And I'm like, well, who are these people? And next thing we know, we really shared that experience together, and we got through it together. But more importantly, we enriched each other's lives. And I think that's one of the things I learned as I went through the two career paths: basketball coaching, as I went through my coaching courses, and then I started teaching the coaching courses, and I had success in coaching. I started to have aspirations to do more and more and more. So I think, well, the beauty of it is doing two things at once, chasing two dreams at once, really give you the opportunity to stay focused and vibrant. I think it's so simple to get stuck in the mundane of doing the same thing day in, day out, right? I often see some teachers, they teach the same 3, 4 subjects every semester, and they do it for a whole career. And after a while, you lose your passion, your love for it. But I found that chasing two things, I was constantly learning, and I eventually got into phys ed full time, and that became what I did. And again, I found that phys ed was a connection to my coaching. The two I was doing at the same time. So I would encourage all people to pursue anything they're passionate about, because it makes life worth living, right? You're getting up, you're excited to encounter new things, And it's funny because my oldest daughter, she's doing that right now. She works at a PR firm, and she's also decided she wants to be a spin instructor. And she's chasing both passions equally, right? And although it's different, I see so many similarities between my path, right? And I think it's important to continue to seek out new challenges. So that's what it did for me.
Passion and chasing two different dreams definitely makes you more focused and passionate and contributes to your overall growth. And for the last question, I'm going to pass it back to Sophie.
Thank you, Cece, and thank you, Tom, for those very inspiring words. I love the idea of chasing as many passions as you can. Usually you're only encouraged to just follow one, but who's to stop you from trying them all and seeing where they all lead you? So, our last question for you today, Tom. Reflecting on your journey of pursuing multiple careers, what significant insights and guidance can you provide for individuals who aspire to explore diverse professional paths?
First thing is to keep as many doors open as possible. When we close doors, we're saying, no, this is definitely not it. It's a little bit like when the weather changes, sometimes we open a window a little bit. And then if it gets really hot, we open it a lot. When it cools down, but we should never really completely close it because we want some air circulating in the house. I see it the same way with our passions and our career paths. I think it's important to go ahead and continue to scan what's available to you in this world. And for people who know me and listen to me yammer on forever, one of the things about that is have a curious mind. Don't ever stop asking questions. Be curious in how things are done. Since I left the university, this is going to be my seventh year re-entering the teaching profession full time. And I've now kind of changed paths because of the opportunities that were there. So I'm now doing special education in elementary school. And if you know me, you think that there's no way this guy is going to be doing. But I came off of such an inspiring year where you get to see kids at the developmental phase and you're seeing how they grow. And again, how do you get through to a 10-year-old is sometimes different than a 16-year-old, and using different techniques. But I really do think one of the things I've learned is if you can keep doors open and you can keep a finger on that button that you're interested in, it's going to lead you down really interesting paths. And I've worked with different people over my career, both in coaching and in teaching, who have gone ahead and done multiple jobs at different times because they were passionate about so many things. And what I would encourage everybody to do is to never be afraid to take a risk. I look back and I thought when I really got serious about coaching, I thought about what would me moving to the States look like. I met some coaches who were recruiting some of my players and, hey, would you want to come down and maybe we can have some conversations? And I said to myself, I don't know if that's really worth it. And I look back, I say, hey, you know what? Who knows what could have happened? And you want to be with the one that said, hey, I remember when I took this jump, it led to these four opportunities. And then those four opportunities led to what I'm doing now. So I would encourage anyone who has a curious mind to explore and see where roads take you. Because definitely the days of one job for your whole career have come and gone. And it's so important to continue to grow. And connected to that is the education piece. Don't be afraid to continue to take courses connected to areas of interest, because those areas of interest are going to open up again so many doors for you. And you often see people get a degree or diploma in one field, but then pursue a completely different career using the skills they learned in those careers. And I know for myself, I see that often. I've done the last few years, especially a lot of curriculum writing in the field of coaching education. And when I did my master's, I never thought I'd be that passionate about, hey, what would this look like? But I thought to myself, what would a PhD have looked like in sports psychology? Because I did some work in that field and my master's in kinesiology. You constantly seek out a curious mind about those topics. And anytime I get an opportunity to read anything in that field, I try to get my hands on it because, again, you want to keep an open mind and a curious mind about what's going on and what's new and exciting. And I know for myself, re-engaging in the world of teaching, I tried my best to go ahead and use new technology in the classroom, and CC, I'm not sure what you found in your first year of university with respect to technology, but when I came back, Google Class was kind of taken off, and Brightspace and D2L, which I really liked because I liked the structure of it, was taken off. And then you learn how to do blended learning. And it just wasn't possible when technology wasn't caught up. So I continue to have an open mind and don't ever be afraid of technology. Don't ever be afraid of taking a risk because even if it doesn't work out, you learn more, I believe, from your failures than you do your successes. That's something I've tried to do in my career that I hope is going to continue to grow. And who knows where it's going to take me.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's really great advice, especially to young listeners. And we tend to have a younger demographic of listeners on our podcast, and especially in respect to technology as well, and incorporating that into your curiosity because it is such an important industry. So yeah, I really appreciate that advice that you've given there. And that concludes our last podcast question for today, Tom. We just want to thank you so much for your time and all of your wisdom. And we hope that our listeners can all take heed of it. And we really appreciate it.
You're welcome. It was a lot of fun, and hopefully someone takes a little bit of what I said and can apply it to their own lives.